Imagine everything you are, your memories, your thoughts, your entire life story written in the atoms of your body. Now imagine all of that being erased, not destroyed, not transformed, erased, as if it never existed, as if you never existed. This is what black holes do. They don't just kill you, they erase you from reality itself. And for 30 years, this simple fact broke physics. It created a paradox so deep, so fundamental, that it threatened to tear apart everything we thought we knew about the universe. I'm Leonard Susskind, and I spent decades fighting about this problem. Fighting with Stephen Hawking, one of the greatest minds in physics. He said information could be destroyed. I said it couldn't. One of us had to be wrong. Let me tell you what we discovered, and why it changes everything you think you know about reality. First, let me explain what a black hole actually is, because most people have it wrong. A black hole is not a hole. It's not a tunnel. It's not a portal to another dimension. A black hole is a region of space-time where gravity is so intense that nothing can escape. Not matter, not light, not information. The boundary of this region is called the event horizon. It's not a physical surface. You wouldn't feel anything special if you crossed it. But once you're inside, there's no way out. Every path forward leads to the center, to the singularity, to the end. Think about what this means. If you fall into a black hole, you're not just trapped. You're doomed. The laws of physics guarantee that you will reach the singularity in a finite amount of time. And at the singularity, space and time themselves break down. The equations give infinities. Physics stops working. But here's what troubled physicists for decades. What happens to you when you fall in? Not your body, your information. The quantum information that describes every particle in your body, every atom, every quantum state. In classical physics, this isn't a problem. Information can be trapped, but it still exists somewhere. Even if we can't retrieve it, it's there in principle. But then Stephen Hawking came along and ruined everything. In 1974, Hawking made one of the most stunning discoveries in theoretical physics. He showed that black holes are not completely black. They radiate. They emit particles and slowly evaporate. Given enough time, a black hole will shrink and eventually disappear entirely. This is called Hawking radiation, and it comes from quantum effects near the event horizon. Empty space is not really empty. It's filled with virtual particles, pairs of particles, and antiparticles, constantly popping into existence and annihilating each other. Near a black hole's event horizon, something strange happens. One particle falls in, the other escapes. The escaping particle carries away energy. The black hole loses mass. It shrinks. This process is incredibly slow. A black hole with the mass of our sun would take longer than the age of the universe to evaporate. But the principle is what matters. Black holes are not eternal. They die. And when they die, they take everything with them. Here's the problem. Hawking radiation is thermal. It's random. It carries no information about what fell into the black hole. It's like the heat coming off a fire. The heat doesn't tell you what was burned. Wood or paper or plastic, it all produces the same kind of heat. So when a black hole evaporates, when it finally disappears in a last burst of radiation, what happens to all the information it swallowed? All the books, all the people, all the stars that fell in over billions of years. Where does that information go? Hawking's answer was terrifying. It doesn't go anywhere. It's destroyed, erased, gone forever. The black hole evaporates into random thermal radiation, and the information about everything that fell in simply ceases to exist. The universe forgets. Do you understand how radical this is? In quantum mechanics, information is conserved. Always. The laws of physics are reversible. If you know the complete quantum state of a system at any time, you can calculate what it was at any previous time and what it will be at any future time. Information is never lost, never created, never destroyed. But Hawking was saying black holes violate this. Black holes destroy information. They erase quantum states from existence. They break the most fundamental rule of quantum mechanics. This is the black hole information paradox, and it's not a minor technical problem. It's a crisis. If information can be destroyed, quantum mechanics is wrong. If information can't be destroyed, then Hawking's calculation is wrong. But Hawking's calculation comes directly from well-established physics. Both can't be right. For years, physicists argued about this. Some sided with Hawking. Maybe information really is destroyed. Maybe quantum mechanics needs to be modified. Maybe there's something special about black holes that allows them to break the rules. I never believed that. I argued loudly and persistently that information cannot be destroyed. That Hawking must be missing something. That there had to be a way for information to escape from black holes, even if we couldn't see how. This wasn't just stubbornness. It was based on a deep principle. If information can be destroyed anywhere, the entire framework of physics falls apart. Quantum mechanics is built on the conservation of information. Every experiment ever done is consistent with it. You can't just throw it away because black holes are weird. But if information isn't destroyed, where does it go? How does it escape from something that nothing can escape from? Let me tell you about one of the strangest ideas in physics. An idea that sounds completely insane, but is almost certainly true. An idea that resolves the paradox but raises even deeper questions about the nature of reality. The information doesn't fall into the black hole at all. It stays on the surface. This is the holographic principle, the idea that all the information about what falls into a black hole is somehow encoded on the event horizon, the two-dimensional surface surrounding the black hole. The three-dimensional interior is in some sense a projection, an illusion, a hologram emerging from the information on the boundary. I know this sounds crazy. How can a three-dimensional object be equivalent to information on a two-dimensional surface? How can you fall into something and simultaneously stay on its surface? But the mathematics works. In 1997, Juan Maldacena showed that in certain theoretical contexts, a theory with gravity in the bulk is exactly equivalent to a theory without gravity on the boundary. The boundary theory is complete. It contains all the information. The bulk, the interior, the three-dimensional space where gravity operates, emerges from that boundary information. If this applies to black holes, and we believe it does, then the paradox dissolves. When you fall into a black hole, your information isn't destroyed. It's encoded on the horizon. It gets scrambled, mixed up, spread across the surface in an incredibly complex way. But it's still there. And when the black hole evaporates, that information escapes in the Hawking radiation. Not in any recognizable form, not in any practically recoverable form. But in principle, the information survives. The black hole doesn't erase reality. It encrypts it. It scrambles it beyond recognition. But it doesn't destroy it. Hawking eventually conceded. In 2004, he admitted that information is probably not destroyed. He paid off a bet he had made with me and Kip Thorne. He acknowledged that black holes don't violate quantum mechanics after all. But solving the information paradox opened up new mysteries. Deeper mysteries. Mysteries that we're still grappling with today. Let me tell you about one of them. The firewall paradox. If information is encoded on the horizon, if the horizon is somehow special, then what happens when you fall through it? In classical general relativity, the horizon is nothing special. You wouldn't even notice crossing it. Space continues smoothly. You fall toward the singularity, but there's no physical barrier at the horizon itself. But if the horizon is where information lives, if quantum effects are important there, then maybe crossing the horizon isn't smooth at all. Maybe there's a wall of high-energy particles, a firewall, that incinerates anything that tries to cross. The information doesn't fall in because nothing falls in. Everything burns at the horizon. This is disturbing because it violates the equivalence principle, the foundation of general relativity. Einstein said that a freely falling observer shouldn't feel anything special, even near a black hole. But the firewall says you'd feel very much something. You'd feel yourself being burned to ash. Which is right? Smooth crossing or firewall? General relativity or quantum mechanics? We don't know for sure. This is an active area of research. I've worked on it. Many people have worked on it. We have ideas, but no definitive answer. What we do know is that black holes are not what they seem. They're not just gravitational monsters swallowing everything in their path. They're quantum information processors. They're the most extreme environments in the universe, where gravity and quantum mechanics collide, where our understanding breaks down, where reality itself becomes strange. Let me tell you something even more disturbing. Something about what happens to you if you fall into a black hole. From your perspective, from the perspective of the falling observer, everything seems normal. You cross the horizon without noticing. You fall toward the singularity. At some point, tidal forces tear you apart. Eventually, you hit the singularity and your story ends. But from the perspective of someone watching from outside, something completely different happens. They see you approach the horizon and slow down. Time dilation becomes extreme near the horizon. They see you freeze at the surface, your image becoming dimmer and redder as the light struggles to escape. They never see you cross. To them, you're smeared across the horizon forever, your information encoded on the surface, never actually falling in. Both perspectives are true. Both are valid descriptions of reality, but they're completely different. In one, you fall in and are destroyed. In the other, you never fall in at all. This is called black hole complementarity. It's the idea that different observers can have radically different descriptions of the same events, and both descriptions are correct. Not just different viewpoints on the same thing, but fundamentally different realities that somehow coexist. This breaks our ordinary intuitions about reality. We think there's one true story, one objective sequence of events, but black holes say no. Reality depends on who's asking. The story changes depending on where you're standing. And here's where it connects to the title of this video: Why Black Holes Erase Reality. From the outside perspective, you never fall in. Your information is preserved on the horizon. It gets scrambled and eventually escapes in the Hawking radiation. Information is conserved. Quantum mechanics is happy. But from your perspective, the infalling observer, the interior is real. You experience it. You fall through it. You reach the singularity and presumably cease to exist. Your subjective reality is erased. Your experience ends. The black hole doesn't erase information, but it erases experience. It erases the interior reality that you, the falling observer, would have lived through. That interior exists for you, but is somehow redundant, somehow already encoded on the horizon, somehow not independently real. What does that even mean? Is the interior real or not? Do you really fall in or not? Is your experience genuine, or is it a shadow, a holographic projection, an illusion emerging from information on a distant surface? These are not philosophical questions. They're physics questions. And we don't have complete answers yet. Let me tell you what I think is happening. And this is speculative. This is me pushing beyond what we know for certain into what I believe is probably true. Reality is not what we think it is. We think of reality as stuff existing in space and time. 3 dimensions of space, one of time, matter and energy moving around, events happening, history unfolding. But black holes suggest something different. They suggest that the fundamental description of reality is not 3-dimensional. It's 2-dimensional. It's information on surfaces. The 3-dimensional world we experience is emergent, derived, secondary. It arises from the processing of information on boundaries. Black holes make this explicit because the horizon is a boundary. And at that boundary, we can see the encoding happening. We can study how interior information is represented on the surface. We can calculate how the scrambling works. But the holographic principle may be universal. It may apply not just to black holes, but to the entire universe. Our whole 3-dimensional cosmos may be a holographic projection from information on a distant cosmological horizon. If that's true, then everything is encoded on the surface. Everything we experience, everything we are, is information processing on a 2-dimensional screen. The 3-dimensional reality we inhabit is a hologram. A very convincing hologram. A hologram so detailed that we live inside it without knowing. Black holes erase reality because they show us that the reality we thought was fundamental isn't fundamental at all. The interior of the black hole feels real to the falling observer, but it's a projection, an emergent description, a story told by information on the horizon. And maybe the same is true for us. Maybe our experience of 3-dimensional space, of time flowing, of events happening, is also a story. A narrative generated by information processing on a surface we can't perceive. This is not mysticism. This is where the mathematics leads. This is what the equations are telling us about the nature of existence. I've spent my life studying these questions, and the more I learn, the stranger reality becomes. Black holes aren't just astronomical objects. They're windows into the fundamental structure of the universe. They're places where our ordinary descriptions fail, where the true nature of reality reveals itself. And if you follow this thread far enough, something unexpected happens. The question stops being about black holes. It stops even being about gravity. It becomes a question about what existence actually means. If reality reduces to information, then persistence is not about survival in space. It is about consistency within the total structure. What continues is not a body, not a location, not an experience in time. What continues is a pattern that remains internally coherent within the universal state. In that sense, nothing is ever thrown away. Nothing is torn out of the ledger. What changes is accessibility. What was once locally available becomes globally distributed. What was once organized in a familiar configuration becomes diffused across correlations we cannot reconstruct. From the inside, that feels like annihilation. From the fundamental level, it is transformation of structure. This forces us to rethink permanence. We imagine durability as something occupying a place, lasting through time. But if space-time itself is secondary, then durability isn't about duration. It's about mathematical necessity, about whether configuration remains part of the total solution. Black holes don't violate that necessity. They enforce it. They scramble what enters them so thoroughly that no local observer could ever retrieve it, but they do not remove it from the total structure. They redistribute it into correlations so vast and so complex that reconstruction becomes physically impossible, but not logically forbidden. And that distinction is everything. Because what physics ultimately cares about is not what we can recover. It cares about what the equations allow. The fundamental laws demand reversibility at the deepest level. They demand that the total structure evolves without deleting itself. So when you fall toward that horizon, whether literally or conceptually, what vanishes is your narrative continuity, your local description of events unfolding. What remains is your contribution to the total informational structure of the universe. You are no longer a story in space-time. You are a pattern in a larger equation. This is where intuition fails us. We are used to thinking in terms of objects and trajectories. But at the deepest level, the universe seems to consist of relationships. Correlations between states, not things, but connections. Not particles moving, but probabilities evolving. From that perspective, what a black hole does is not tear reality apart. It forces reality to reveal its bookkeeping. It exposes that existence is not about where something is, but about how it fits into the global structure. And this has a strange implication. If everything that happens leaves its imprint on the total quantum state, then nothing is absolutely isolated. Every interaction writes itself into the fabric of correlations. Every event alters the grand state in ways that cannot be undone without undoing the entire structure. The universe is not a sequence of disposable moments. It is a single, consistent object, a vast entangled configuration where every part influences the whole. That means the notion of erasure is local. It belongs to observers embedded within limited slices of the structure. Erase experience in one frame of reference, and it still exists encoded in another description. Destroy the interior viewpoint, and the boundary bookkeeping remains intact. The disappearance we fear is not deletion. It is inaccessibility. And that difference changes the emotional weight of the story. Because if nothing is ever fundamentally removed, if no quantum state truly vanishes, then existence itself has a kind of irreversibility, not in time, but in structure. Once something becomes part of the universal configuration, it cannot simply be undone without unraveling the entire tapestry. Black holes dramatize this because they operate at the limits of our theories. They push gravity and quantum mechanics into direct conflict. They generate contradictions that force clarity. They make us confront the possibility that what we perceive as solid, continuous, and objective may be a coarse narrative layered over something more abstract. And once you internalize that, the world looks different. The night sky is no longer just distant light scattered across emptiness. It becomes an interface, a large-scale expression of underlying correlations stretching across scales we cannot directly access. Your body is no longer simply matter located in space. It is a temporary concentration of degrees of freedom, dynamically exchanging information with its surroundings. Time is no longer a flowing river carrying events forward. It is a parameter embedded within a broader mathematical object whose structure contains the entire history at once. Black holes are dramatic because they compress all of this into a single paradox. They tell us that from one vantage point, you are lost beyond retrieval. From another vantage point, you have always been integrated into a deeper order. They teach us that perspective is not cosmetic, it is ontological. And this is where the transformation truly happens. When you understand that the universe is not a machine grinding forward, but a self-consistent informational structure, you stop asking, where does everything go? Instead, you ask, how is everything related? The shift is subtle but profound. Loss becomes reconfiguration. Endings become boundaries of description. Erasure becomes redistribution. Even the idea of death, whether of a star, a galaxy, or a conscious being, becomes reframed, not as subtraction from existence, but as diffusion within a total state that never forgets. That doesn't make experience eternal in the way religion promises. It makes structure unavoidable. You may not persist as a narrator of events, but the configuration that you were, the exact quantum specification that defined your body and mind, becomes woven into the universal state in ways that cannot be undone. Not remembered in human terms, not archived in a cosmic filing cabinet, but present in the total solution of reality. That is a colder idea than immortality, and in some ways more astonishing, because it means the universe has no delete button, only evolution, only redistribution, only complexity rearranging itself. Black holes forced us to see this because they seemed to threaten it. They appeared to punch holes in consistency to allow the universe to forget. But the deeper mathematics refused to permit that. Information must survive, not because we want it to, not because it is comforting, but because the structure of quantum theory demands it. And that requirement hints at something larger. It suggests that reality is not fragile. It is tightly constrained. It cannot contradict itself. It cannot spontaneously remove pieces of its own state. It must conserve its own consistency. Black holes, in trying to break that rule, only revealed how deeply the rule is embedded. And that is why they are such powerful teachers. They did not erase reality. They revealed that the version of reality we trusted was only a provisional layer. Beneath it lies a structure far less intuitive, far less visual, but far more precise. A universe where nothing disappears. Where nothing is absolutely isolated. Where what feels like erasure is simply the loss of a local frame. And where the ultimate continuity does not lie in memory or matter, but in the unbroken coherence of the total state. That is the deeper lesson. Not that existence is fragile, but that it is profoundly mathematically consistent. Black holes do not annihilate. They expose. They strip away narrative comfort. They dismantle classical intuition. And in doing so, they push us closer to the fundamental architecture of what is. And once you see that architecture, once you understand that nothing is ever truly deleted, only transformed within an immense web of correlations, the universe stops looking like a collection of objects and starts looking like a single, evolving pattern. A pattern vast enough to include stars, gravity, horizons, paradoxes, and you, not as an isolated character, but as a configuration within the whole. That configuration may dissolve locally, but it never falls outside the structure. And that is the quiet, unsettling, almost beautiful truth that black holes forced us to confront. Reality is not erased. It is redistributed beyond recognition. And the structure never stops running.